Hey, what's going on, friends? This is Paul Hutchings coming to you live with episode 121 of The Good Parts. Hope you're having an amazing day. In today's episode, I am going to be talking about something a little different, a little bit more maybe raw, authentic. And today's video has a specific purpose, and that is to reach a certain type of person who's in a certain place in their life where they're wrestling with or maybe even hurting within their faith. And so if you're not that person, if you've got kind of everything figured out and everything makes sense and everything's working well, this video is not for you. But if you're in the other category, you probably kind of identify with that introduction. And so, I'm going to be sharing with you, if you're still watching, 4 things that really helped me and continue to help me on my faith journey as I continue moving forward, wrestling with some of the big questions in life. And the way that I want to start this out is to share a shout out to Amy Starr Allen. You know, sometimes in life and business, you send out a good idea that then comes back to you like a boomerang and hits you when you need it. And this morning on our Grow Rich Mastermind, Amy Starr Allen was hosting, and she mentioned these Good Parts episodes that I've been doing. And she talked about the origin story of these good parts and the inspiration for them, which I had forgotten a little bit. And she said, you know, Paul really likes the artist Andy Grammer, and he has a song called The Good Parts. And she read the lyrics from the song. And as I listened to what Amy was saying, I remembered, you know, the inspiration for this show. And funny enough, the inspiration for The Good Parts and the lyrics from the Good Parts song is not about always just being 100% positive and only ever talking about the best things in life that are happening. You know, for the most part, I think we do want to strive to be positive and focus on those things. But the lyrics from the song express a little bit of a different message. And I want to share some of these lyrics with you before I get into the meat of what I wanted to talk about today. So the song says, "I'm sorry if I seem impatient. I'm not a fan of pleasantry. See, I get bored with the weather and what's in the news, the topics we all hide beneath." So what are the topics that we hide beneath? You know, what are those topics? We talk about random things, chit chat, you know, normal goings on of life. But I think for all of us, there are some topics and some areas that we usually just kind of keep down. We hide them. And then the lyrics go on to say, "Could not care less about your day job, the gossip, or ordinary stress. See, every relationship I have ever loved, it starts when someone says, 'Show me where it hurts and give me something real and lead me to the part of you that never really heals. And say the words that burn when they leave your mouth. Tell me your story, but don't leave the good parts out.'" And you know, I'm gonna stop the screen here. So that those lines kind of have an essence for me that some of the best parts of us and our stories are the parts that are maybe the parts that we sometimes keep hidden. And when you can connect with another human being and allow some of the walls to come down and those good parts can come out, there's something magical, you know, that happens. And one of the other lines from that song talks about the ordinary stress. It says, "Could care less about your day job, the gossip, or ordinary stress." So, you know, what's ordinary stress? You know, ordinary stress is like money, family, someone cut you off in traffic, you know, big long to-do list. You know, these are kind of like ordinary stresses that maybe some of us all deal with. But what's a stress that's not totally ordinary that you know, I think relates to faith? Existential stress. You know, that's a stress that is not, it's not like ordinary, everyday, normal, things that people talk about. It's like, you know, if you ever get to a point where you're questioning your very existence, if you get to a point where you're maybe struggling with, you know, core beliefs that you've had that have sustained you for a long period of time, that's not an ordinary stress. And that is kind of leading into, you know, the things that I wanted to talk about today. But one more story before I get into this. So Amy with these lines inspired me, but then also something else happened yesterday that I wrote about in the description. And that is, I had a random person come over to my house to give me a bid for a project. And that random interaction turned into a 4-hour conversation where we talked about so many things other than the thing that the person had come over to talk about. And in this conversation, we those walls came down, and the things that the shell that we sometimes put over us, where it's like, okay, these things are okay to say, these things are okay to say because there's a shell that I know that other people need to see. For both of us, those shells came down, and we were just able to be honest and open and authentic with each other and talk about the parts of our stories that were some of the parts that were really hard and difficult to deal with. And it just so happens that his hard parts were similar to some of my hard parts, and they related to this wrestling with faith, where maybe you've got this faith, this tradition, this set of beliefs that you've been given, that at some point in your life you start to wonder, like, okay, are these things that I say I believe, do I really believe them, and are they all 100% true? And you start to ask questions, and maybe some of the answers that you find are not what you thought you would find, and it can kind of put you into this space where some people have described it as a dark night of the soul, where the foundation that you thought was solid and beneath your life and the way you view life kind of like falls apart, and you feel like you're floating. This is like a wrestling with faith. And so I know I'm not the only one who's gone through things like this, because this person that I met yesterday had gone through similar things. And as we talked, he started telling me about, his family, some of his family members who had gone through this, and friends that he knows are going through this. And this particular thing that I'm talking about today, I don't think is unique to any one set of religious ideals. It's not unique to any one specific religious tradition. I think it's just something that, for those of us who want to be on a search for truth and who want to seek the highest God in the best way that we can, if we're honest, we're asking questions, and we're looking for where those questions lead us. And so anyway, it got me thinking about this part of my journey that has been one of the parts that I, for the most part, kind of keep hidden under the surface. I don't really talk about this ever in my content. But it's been a part of my journey that was very difficult to go through, was very painful to go through. And I know that, I know I'm not the only one who goes through things like this. And so I wanted to share 4 things that really helped me as I went through this process, and honestly, as I still continue to go through the process of striving to have faith in a day and age where there are so many things that can challenge or shake pillars, that are holding that faith up. These 4 things have been very helpful to me. And I never want to come across as I solved it all, like I'm on the other side and everything's perfect, because that's not where I'm at. It's like a journey that we go through. That being said, I feel like I'm through most of the hardest parts of it. And these 4 things really helped me. So I'm going to share these 4 things with you, and say hello to Veronique from Belgium. Say hello to Bill. Hello. And say hello to Booker. Hello. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And if you're following me or have been following me for business purposes, you might be wondering, like, what the heck does this have to do with business at all? And really, the point of the video today is it's not really business related. That being said, what I have found in business that has been maybe the most helpful thing to me over the years is to have a strong faith that my business and my life they all have a purpose, and they're all being built upon something good. And so, in a loose sense, I think you could say that faith is so connected to business that it's just essential. And so anyway, here are the 4 tips. So number 1, if you're finding yourself in that category of person who's wrestling with their faith and or even hurting in their faith, these are my 4 things that I want to say to you. Number 1, you're not alone. It can feel alone if you're struggling with this type of thing in silence. And why does this happen? many reasons why you might struggle in silence, but one reason is that oftentimes when we're social creatures, us human beings, and oftentimes to feel like we're a part of a group, there is a certain expectation that we all place on each other. Like, hey, if you're one of us, this is how you look, this is how you show up, this is what you believe. And so if you're in a group of people that all are, moving in this one certain direction, and then you internally start to question, like, I don't know, like you start to have questions or doubts, you don't say anything because you don't want to be viewed as an outcast, or all these negative views that can come upon you. And so you suffer in silence. And so the first thing that I want to say is, if you're in that category, you're not alone. There are many people just like you going through the same things that you're going through, and just not being vocal about it for the reason that I mentioned, but also for the reason of, oftentimes you don't want to cast your problems and struggles on other people. And so you hold it in and it can feel like you're in a very lonely place. So number one is, you're not alone. And along with that, I would like to say that going through a stage of life where you're questioning some of the biggest questions, not only are you not alone, but in my studies, it seems to me that I've learned that that's actually a normal part of becoming an adult. Is that for many adults, you go through this phase where you just start to wonder and question if, the things you believe are actually true. And maybe you dig a little deeper into them because you want to know. That's a very, very normal part of the human existence. So that's the first thing. The second thing that I would say, and this is probably more geared toward anyone who might be going through this in some sort of a religious circle, is you're not crazy. And that's another thing that you can think if you're going through these things alone. Is the first thought is, am I crazy? Is there something wrong with me because I'm daring to ask questions that are not typically accepted by the status quo? You start to think, am I crazy? Is there something wrong with me? You're not crazy. It's normal to ask questions. And I would say, one of my quotes that I jotted down some time ago is, questions are the keys that unlock the mental chains of thought tyrants. Questions are how we discover those chains. In some cases, not all beliefs are chains, but in some cases we've been given chains, and it's in questioning those chains to find out, are these legitimate chains, or are these chains that I might want to break free? That's a normal thing. And I think that's one way that the mind becomes more free, is through daring to ask questions that might be unpopular in some groups of people. So you're not crazy. And also along with that, you're not evil for having doubts or asking questions. This is something that sometimes happens, especially in religious circles, where if you're a person that expresses a doubt in some area, the thought can come that, Satan's got a hold of you. No, that's not the case. You're just a normal human and you're just asking questions, and that's normal. So to recap the first two: one, you're not alone; two, you're not crazy, or you're not evil. You're just looking for truth. And I think that has everything right in the world with it. And then the third thing that I wanted to share, Gio says, I love feeling good about business. Awesome. Me too, Gio. Me too. Greg says, thank you for always adding value in the space. My pleasure. Thanks for tuning in, Gregory Napier. But the third thing that I wanted to share that is so helpful if you're in this category of person that I've described is this metaphor that I picked up from a friend named Will a number of years ago. I was at an event, and it was after the event. We were up, stairs, sitting on a couch, just us two. And it was one of those conversations where all the walls fell down and we could just be honest and open with each other about our innermost thoughts, and just experience that magic of, letting the walls come down, getting rid of the ordinary gossip and the ordinary, conversation, and just, look at each other and say, what do you really think? And so we were having one of these conversations around this topic that I'm mentioning today. And my friend Will, he told me this metaphor that you may have heard. If you haven't, this is a really powerful metaphor. At least it has been for me. And the metaphor is of this old Buddhist master or monk, a master monk who's teaching one of his students. And as he's teaching one of his students, the Buddhist master is pointing to the moon and is like trying to tell the student where to look. There's the moon, there's the light. We want to point to the light. And as he's doing this, he looks over at his student and he realizes that the student is not looking at the moon, but the student is looking at the finger. And at that point, the Buddhist monk master says, "No, not the finger. It's the moon. It's the light that we want to look to." And this metaphor for me was so powerful through, those hard parts of my digging down deep in my soul. This metaphor was helpful for me because it helped me to realize that in life, there are many things that can point us to a higher power, that can point us to God. Many things. Churches can point us to God. Books can point us to God. People can point us to God. And they all have a very useful purpose in that regard. But the mistake that I think I made, and that it's easy to sometimes make, is to mistake the finger for what the finger is pointing to. And this is a dangerous thing because if by chance on our journeys of asking the hard questions, we might come to some realization that, maybe this finger wasn't all that I thought it was. If that's where your faith is and that thing falls, now everything's gone. But if instead you have the realization that, wow, this thing that I thought maybe was a perfect finger, all I discovered was that it was just a finger and it was pointing me in a good place. And that makes it so if you discover things that kind of like challenge your faith or knock these pillars out and down, if you can remember that they were just pillars and keep your mind pointed to the light, for me, that was so helpful to realize that I could continue to have my faith in the highest. I could continue to have my faith in the light. And furthermore, I could be a little more easy, and this is all a process, but a little more easy on the fingers that I thought disappointed me because they were just fingers. And in a lot of cases, these fingers that are pointing to the highest that sometimes disappoint us, in a lot of cases, they're just doing the best they can to be a good finger. And it was us that made the mistake, maybe, of assuming that finger was the light, when really it was never meant to be the light. And a story from the Christian tradition that I think does a good job of kind of driving this point home is in the Old Testament. There's the story of the Israelites when they are free from the Egyptians and they go out into the wilderness and Moses goes up to get the stone tablets, right? And then what do the Israelites do? They start making idols. And when Moses comes down from the mountain, he's like, "What are you doing? It's not the idol. We're not here to worship idols. We're not here to worship fingers. We're here to point ourselves in the highest direction that we can." And so that's the third thing that I would share with anyone who finds themselves in this particular space. Pointers are everywhere, and they're pointers, and they can continue to guide us. They can continue to guide us into good places. So these four things: you're not alone. You're not. There's nothing wrong with you. You're not crazy. You're not evil. Keep in mind pointers as you're going through this process. And then the last thing that I would say is that there are brighter days ahead. There are brighter days ahead. And I say this because, this process that I've kind of like, I'm trying to hint to without being too specific, because I think it can apply to a lot of different people in a lot of different areas, in a lot of different circumstances. But one phrase that I've heard used to describe this process, where you come to a point in your life where you start to question everything. And as you're questioning things, you may be finding things you thought were a certain way are not the way you thought. And it can feel like, and here's the phrase, a dark night of the soul, where maybe even you start to question, is there even God? Like, does this reality have any meaning? Is there anything that's true? Is there anything I can count on? And that can feel like a very foundationless place to be, where you're just blowing around in the wind And they refer to it as a dark night of the soul because it can be so hard and so many tears can be shed and so much pain can be pulsating throughout your soul. And so the thing that I wanted to say on that, this fourth tip, is that there are brighter days ahead. There, in my experience, the sun always follows the night, and in my experience, there are truths that we can count on. There are principles we can use to guide our lives. There are pointers that have our best interests at heart that can continue to help us live good lives and do good things. And there's all of that light to look forward to if you happen to be in one of those dark spots. So those were the four things that I wanted to share. These have helped me a lot. And I'm going to check the comments here real quick, see what you guys are saying. Booker says it's called life, and I encourage people to ask questions all the time. Love that, Booker. Not surprised to hear you say that. Veronique says, thank you for the information. Great, good parts. Thank you so much. And Booker says, good topic, Paul Wall. I always encourage people to ask questions in my classes. And I tell them you have to think for yourself. Yeah. And, my view is that if a truth is a truth, it can withstand a flashlight. It can withstand shining some light on it and looking at it and just saying, like, is this really a truth? Like, the truth can stand by itself. It's on a good foundation. So as long as we're looking for truth, I don't think we have to be afraid, that some of the beliefs that we think are true may have some scrutiny, may have some challenge. Like, I think that's a thing to be embraced. And also, like, how strong is your belief if it can never withstand a legitimate question? Not very strong. And how much can you help people who ask legitimate questions if you've never taken the time to ask legitimate questions and see where those questions go? And my personal experience has been that I feel like, having gone through some of this in my journey, I feel like, this is the way I describe it, that God had to break me down all the way down so that I could start to be built back up in I like to think maybe ways that God wanted me to be built back up. And I feel like my faith today, while not perfect, faith is a journey, I think. It's a continual journey. But I feel like my faith today is probably deeper than it ever has been after having gone through, some of these dark nights. So there are brighter days ahead for sure. And so with that, that is it for the good parts. A little different episode today. But again, I hope this message reaches the people that it's supposed to reach. I just felt inspired. I needed to give this message today. And that's why I did it. So with that, one other thing that's helped me, I will say, is, community. It's good to be around people who can support you, who can lift you up, who can believe in you, who can provide an environment of non-judgment as much as possible and acceptance as much as possible. And so on this website here, there is a button that says grow yourself. And if you check that button out and put your name and email in, you'll be subscribing to my email list to get more of my future content. But also in that process, you can learn about a community that I've been a part of for 2 decades. It's free. There's no charge to be a part of the community. It's a personal development community. And this community helped me so much in some of these hard parts that are the good parts, that I'm talking about in this video, in 2 ways. One, the way that I already mentioned, that to be around people that are just accepting and loving and encouraging while you're going through, whatever you might be going through, it really helped me to feel like I was not alone, even though a lot of these things I kept private and I kept buried underneath. But just to be a part of people that were there for me every day helped me to feel like I was not alone. That's number one. But the other reason that this particular community has helped me a lot, specifically with the things I'm talking about today, is that we study what we like to call principles. And I didn't invent these. There's a certain set of books that outlines a philosophical framework of principles that mentors that I respect have told me that I could rely on as a valid and effective way to view and proceed through life. Jim Rohn, one of my early mentors, said, your philosophy is the major determining factor in how your life works out. Your philosophy. And so what is philosophy other than what are the pillars of your beliefs, of your worldview? What are the pillars? And are those pillars solid? Can you count on them? And so in this community, we study this set of pillars, and I'm not going to say it's the be all end all truth, but what I will say is that these pillars have given me a solid foundation with which to rest my mind and my soul as I continue to journey through life. They've given me a good place to land when the many times over the years that I've maybe had a shift in belief somewhere. I've had these pillars that I could continue to rely on, and that has been so helpful to me. So again, you can visit my website at paulhutchings.net/GIFTS. Click on the Grow Yourself button, and you can learn about those pillars, and you can learn about a community that meets every day to study those pillars and just do the best that we can to support each other in life. And with that, I am going to close the live. If you did get value, I'd love to encourage you to subscribe to me here on social media. And this is definitely a different video. Not all my videos are on this kind of thing, but it was in my heart, so I had to share it. So thanks everyone for tuning in and commenting down below. I appreciate you guys. Again, Veronique, Bill, Booker, Gio, Gregory Napier, Veronique, and all the people who will watch the replay. Comment down below. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know if this was of any value to you today. And I want to encourage you to keep moving forward, never give up, take action, have a big goal, have a big dream, look forward to that sunset, that goes down and then comes up and then goes down and then comes up, that light, keep moving toward the light. And I think we can all expect better things in our future. So, all right, guys.